an exciting night as always. Thank you for coming out. For those who, I guess, we're being recorded now, so is it just audio or video?
Both.
Oh. So we welcome you, whoever hears the sound of my voice. We welcome you. You made a choice to come tonight. It means you're hungry and you want to grow and you want tomorrow to become better than it was today. And the only way tomorrow becomes better today is we make the right choices and we become better. But we have to choose to grow. Doesn't that kind of make sense? So we're going to continue this series on choices that matter in life. Because we all, as I've said before, we're all a reflection of the choices that we have made, aren't we? Our spirit, our soul, and our body. It's choices that we have made. And so last week we spoke about courage. It's a choice that we have to make, particularly in battle, when we're going through trying circumstances, we're going through fiery trials or difficult circumstances or obstacles or just plain trouble in life, whatever it is that we're going through. We need courage. Right? We talked about that last week. We have to be strong and courageous because it takes courage and it's a choice. We have to decide. Are we going to respond with faith or we're going to kind of wimp out and react in fear? And so with courage, that's why we said last week that God's always encouraging us. Be strong and courageous because we go through situations. We have to be strong. Particularly in today's world, we have to be strong. We have to have courage. And so tonight we're going to talk about fear. And fear basically is a loss of courage. If you don't have courage, you're going to have fear. And so we're going to talk about fear. I'm going to expose it for what it is. And we're going to just dive into it. You see, fear I like to liken to it as fear is like drifting in through the cracks of the floorboards. Or it's like filtering down like a chilling mist, like a fog. I call it fear. And it just whispers omens of the unknown and the unseen. You see, fear, I look at it, it surrounds individuals like with this blinding billowy road, and this creature goes around and it hisses. What if? What if God doesn't hear my prayers? What if he doesn't heal me? What if I lose my job? We always hear what ifs. What if? You see, one blast of its awful breath transforms saints into atheists, reversing a person's entire mindset because its bite releases paralyzing venom to its victim. And it isn't long before doubt begins to creep into your life and it begins to dull the vision that you have. It begins to dull the plans and the purposes that God has for you. You can't see anymore. And it brings the world of uncertainty into your life. And uncertainty breeds anxiety. And so, if you fall prey to this attack of this beast, let me tell you, it displays no mercy. In fact, as you fall down, it steps on your face and it feels like the weight of a Sherman tank. And then you know what it does? It laughs at your crippled condition as it prepares for another assault. Does that sound like fear to you? Have you ever met this beast? Fear. We all have. Because it creeps into the cockpit of your life through over a dozen different doors. And should we open up some of those doors? Come on, let's see. I don't hear an amen for that. Let's open up some of those doors. Amen. Amen. Sometimes we don't want to open up some of those doors. But let's open up some of these doors. You see, there's a fear, I call it, and I've just made a list of these from what I know and from whether it's my own or talking to people, working with people over the years, over decades of working with people. And one of them, my first one comes to my mind is the fear of failure. You see, we're afraid to launch out into something that God has for us because we're afraid we might fail. Maybe it was told to you when you were young, And so it sits in your mind and resides that, you'll never amount to anything. So why bother trying? It's too hard. You're not skilled in that. And so we have the fear of failure, so we don't really move out, we don't try anything. It's a fear of failure. And we have to be honest with ourselves. Because we have to face our fears. There's another one. Some people have a fear of crowds. They don't like to be around people. They're very shy and timid. I don't have anything to say. They feel like, I don't have anything to say. I'm not valued enough. I don't have anything worth saying. People have that feeling. It's a fear. For whatever reason, wherever the origins happen, we have these fears. Some people have a fear of disease. To this day, I just got back from Portugal not too long ago, and people are still wearing masks walking down the street in public outside when nobody's around. I see it here. I see people in a car driving a vehicle all by themselves with a mask on, only to take it off to take a puff of cigarette and put it back on. I don't get it. But people have a fear of disease. God bless you. People have a fear of disease. Some people have a fear of rejection. We have to kind of look at ourselves. Do I really have a fear of rejection? Because it always comes down in behavior. Fear of rejection. I don't have anything to say because I don't want to be rejected. I'm not going to try for that job. They're not going to hire me. We have this low self-image. It all stems from a low self-image. But we have this fear of rejection. Maybe it's from childhood. Doesn't really matter where it came from, but it resides in our minds. And subsequently, we wind up behaving in a way to fulfill that prophecy of I have a fear of rejection. Fear of unemployment. You always have to be doing something. I just got laid off. So I had this fear. I don't know if I'll ever get a job. Who will hire me? I'm not skilled. Whatever. People have these fears. Unemployment. Some people have a fear of what others say about you. Talking about you. And we know when you're starting out in life, you're always worried about what people are saying about you. But when you get to my age and you realize over the years that the people, they weren't thinking about you. They weren't even talking about you at all. It was all in our head. We think people are talking about us. But we conjure up this thing in our heads. What about fear of moving away? People have a fear of that. Whether it's for a job, whether it's I want to move towards family, because we're comfortable in a place and it's the unknown is very fearful. I don't want to move away. I'm comfortable in my environment. So people have these fears. Some people have a fear of heights. I have a fear of heights when it's over 11 feet tall. I kind of look over. I don't know what, I mean, that's probably a natural fear, I don't know. But it's really learned behavior because, toddlers, when I was raising our kids, when we were raising our daughters, we had a stairway because we had 2 floors. And they'll be crawling and they'll be leaning over on the top step and looking down or wherever there's a drop. They're not afraid. They haven't learned fear. They look down and it's like. So people have a fear of heights, but it gets so obsessive. But what about people have a fear of death? Especially as you get older, you get my age, you start thinking about the days. They're shorter than they are behind you. So, well, I don't want to. I used to take a lot of risks physically in sports type of thing, or skiing or whatever it was. I don't do that as much anymore. I'm not as crazy. But what about the fear of being yourself? Some people wear masks all the time. They fulfill all kinds of roles. They don't even know who they are. And people don't want people to know who I really am because they think they're not valuable. They think that, I'm really not worthy to be talking or being with somebody else because you don't know me. And we feel we have a low self-esteem, we think we're really bad, and so even though God's forgiven us and we're going on and we've been blood washed, we still have a fear of being ourselves. Some people have a fear of buying something, just to spend $1. Some people have a fear of selling. They don't want to let go. They made TV programs called Hoarders. Anybody ever see that program, Hoarders? People don't want to let go. I have some things. I have 8-track tapes still in my closet. For those of you who are old enough to know what I'm talking about. I didn't get rid of them. I made my own recordings, and I don't even think they'll play if it plays them. Don't ask me why I'm keeping them. But you see, people sometimes they're just afraid of selling, getting rid of anything. So they hoard. It's just a fear. It doesn't make any sense. Some people have a fear of financial reversal, losing all their money. It's logical, but you know what? Sometimes we make stupid decisions and we lose our money.
That's right.
Some people have a fear of war. Some people have a fear of the dark. Remember? I don't remember as a kid I was afraid of the dark. But maybe I was, I don't remember. But when you grow up in the city and you really grow up by yourself and your parents are never home, you kind of like dark doesn't bother you, especially when you live in New York City. But some people have a fear of traveling. Some people have a fear of being alone. I never understood that, but I remember there were many calls that I went to check on the well-being of elderly people. And whether it was a widow or a widower, they were by themselves, they always had the TV on. TV always had to be on. They weren't sitting there watching it, it just had to be on, voices going on, because you feel more safe. When I used to go see my mom when she was alive, she'd always had the TV on, but she never watched it. It always had to be on. See, because sometimes people feel this fear of being alone. And of course, fear of flying, people have a fear of flying, but I can go on. I just had written down a couple of things that I knew that are very common with people. But see, what happens is it lurks through the shadows around every imaginable corner of your life. Fear. In fact, what it does is, when the fear attaches or when it comes around or when you start feeling fearful, it robs you of your inner peace and your outward poise or your countenance. You don't have peace anymore. See, that's important. So I want to take a look at this. It's one of the most powerful scriptures that God had shown me, but it's written so many times. It's over 300 times the Bible talks about fear not, do not be afraid, don't worry. But listen, in Isaiah it says this, fear not, for I am with you. Now, if you could grasp the magnitude of this, God speaking to you in the midst of a storm, where he says, fear not, don't be afraid. I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. Could you imagine you get knocked down? And you hear God saying, I will strengthen you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. I will help you. Could you imagine if you heard that in the midst of the storm? How fear would just dissipate? And then you have peace that God has said he has given to you when you're going through a situation. So let's define it, what it is. Fear, we know it's a noun. It's an unpleasant, in your notes, it's unpleasant. We know it's an unpleasant, often strong emotion caused by what? Anticipation. Fill that in. It's anticipation. We worry about things. We're fearful of things that do not even exist in our lives. But it's in our head. For some reason we think it is. We anticipate, or an awareness of danger. Okay, yeah, if I stand on the top of a building, I look over, I'm going to get these willies. And I'm like, yeah, okay, that's dangerous because let me back up. I don't like heights. But see, it's also defined as an anxious concern, anxiety. Here's where we get anxiety from. And many people live with anxiety. And so we understand that we have to guard peace with us. He's given us his peace. So why are we anxious? And some other names, I think I wrote it in your notes, that we associate fear with. Dread. You ever hear the word dread? Like, I dread going to the gym. I dread exercise. I dread fasting. Oh, I dread that interview. I dread going to work. We hear it all the time. It's another word for there's something going on. I'm fearful. I'm anxious about this. And we got fright, alarm. We use the word panic attacks. I worked with somebody who always got panic attacks. Terror, trepidation, which means it's this nervous or fearful feeling that you get. Sometimes you can't even explain it. Apprehension, the quivering, it's a painful agitation really in the presence or anticipation of danger. Anticipating the worst. The worst. We anticipate the worst. I don't know if that's human nature or is that just the way we're brought up. I grew up anticipating the worst. Everything was negative. I always said my mother wrote the book on negativity. So we anticipate something that doesn't exist. We fabricate the whole scenario. And our body responds to it because all our bodies do is respond to whatever goes on up here. It's a servant to the mind. That's all it is. That's how God created us. So let's look at what Paul wrote. Right on the bottom it says, do not be anxious about anything. And that covers about anything. It's not, well, it's just the little things. The big things you can be anxious about because I understand. You know, Paul was shipwrecked. He was beaten. He was left for dead. So he's gone through a couple of things. But he said, don't be anxious about anything. Anything that happens in your life, from the smallest to the most catastrophic thing. Don't be anxious. Don't be anxious. And look what he says. Here's the prescription. But in every situation, everything that you go through, by prayer, petition, with thanksgiving, we present your request to God. Now, when you present your request to God, it's not like he doesn't know what you need. It's not like he was caught off guard, he was doing something over in India, and I didn't realize you went through this situation, so tell me what your problem is. He already knows it. But there's a key here. He wants you to make your request known because he wants you to speak it. He wants you to begin to speak solutions that God is your solution, and he wants you to take your focus off the problem and woe is me and look to him and be able to voice your concern, voice your request, get it out. And sometimes we could complain and say, God, I don't know why me, and he'll listen. We have to sometimes get it out. And sometimes I have situations where I wouldn't say I was mad at God, but him and I weren't talking for a while because it was just that way. Because he didn't do what I said he should do, and so I thought he just kind of left me out hanging for a while. But, so anxious about anything. Now, take this truth down, because this is very important. You see, the beginning of anxiety really is the end of your faith. And of course, the converse is true. And the beginning of true faith really is the end of anxiety. Isn't that wonderful? So if you have anxiety in your heart and you feel anxious, guess what? As faith begins to rise up and you start focusing more on the solution and God is with you, anxiety starts to drop, faith comes in. But see, when we begin to have anxiety, that means that faith, we're at the end of our faith. We gave up on it. We don't believe in God anymore because we get anxiety. And anxiety basically it's really the end of faith. It's either you trust in God or you're going to trust in yourself or trust in, I don't know what we trust in when we get anxious. And this is what happens. And that's why Paul said, don't be anxious. So we could be this first person, fear, savings, anxiety, worry, fear, no sleep, stress, dread, health, sickness, overtime, no time, tired, headache, bills, payment, stress. Sounds like a working mom, doesn't it? Work, job, retirement, anxiety, all these things, late nights, we don't sleep, we're thinking of all this stuff we have to do. And we want to know why we lose sleep. Then we want to know why we get sick, because we're not sleeping properly. Or you wind up like this. Faith. God's with me. Doesn't matter what I go through. I could go into the fire. They could turn it up 7 times hotter. And you know what? I'm not going to get burned. Your choice. What do you want? We don't really intentionally choose anxiety, but we do. We'll get into that. You know why? Let's define what fear really is. It's a bully. It's a creature really that relies on scare tactics and surprise attacks when you least expect it. But you know what it does? It watches for your vulnerable moments of your life. And then what it does, it picks the lock that safeguards your security. So I ask you, what is your security in? Is your security in your career, in your job? Because that can file bankruptcy, they can lay you off. Then what? Is your security in a relationship? Because they could fail. Is your security in your portfolio and your stock investments? Because that could dry up. Economy can tank. Is your security in your house? Is your security in the government, the economy? Last night, the government shut down. So what is your security in? What is your strength in? See, if it's not in God, everything else will fail. So once fear strikes, what it does is it quickly transforms spiritual muscle into mental mush. It's one of the things I was invited to speak down in Bahamas and talk to the kids in a high school about choices that they had to make. And it was so relevant that, you know what? You have to be able to confront bullies and stand up, because that was a big problem with them with bullies. And this is really what fear is. They use surprise attacks and scare tactics that try to just, they look for your vulnerable moments. So see here, fears, now here we go. I want you to get this. Fears are nothing more than the states of mind that you have. That's what it is. It's how are you seeing things? It's just a state of mind. Just like courage was a state of mind. What are you going to choose? And the problem is we have to choose. Fear, faith. Courage, fear. It's your choice. God's given us a lot of choices in this world. We're responsible. Because it's just a perception, it's your expectations. Now, follow me. If this is true in your notes, then one state of mind is subject to control and direction. So, we decide. We have a choice of what we're going to do. We have a choice of what we're going to think. And we have a choice of what we're going to say. And in this case, what are we going to do? We have control and direction of where our mind goes. Why do I say that? Because Jesus said, or Paul wrote to Timothy in the Word, and says, you have not been given a spirit of fear. You have been given a spirit of love, power, and a sound mind. That's the fruit of the Spirit. And so it's like if I said to someone like, yeah, you should really meet Susie. She's got a generous spirit in her heart. Or Donnie, he's just he has a kind spirit. So this is what we're talking about. It's that attitude. It's, Pete's got a humble spirit. We hear that phrase. And this is what it's talking about. We have a spirit of power. We have a spirit of love. We can love the unlovely. We have the capabilities of loving the unloving. To forgive when we don't want to forgive. To become more than a conqueror and overcome whatever comes our way. Because we have that. We have that warrior mentality. See, Paul also says this. Casting down arguments and every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God, bringing every thought captive to the obedience of Christ. You know how many thoughts we have in a day? Somebody give me a number.
10,000.
10,000. Do I hear?
100 million.
Okay. Anybody else? I did a research. I didn't do the research. I read, somebody did a research on it. We have about 70,000 thoughts a day coming into our head. We don't know, we don't really, because a lot of them we don't pay attention to, you know, but that's what happens. We try to think, I don't think I think 70,000 thoughts. No, we don't think 70,000 thoughts, but these are the thoughts that come and go. And this is the key, see, because when we get thoughts, we have to see, and this is what Paul's saying, we have to see, okay, are these good thoughts? Positive thoughts? Are they godly thoughts? Or are they ungodly thoughts? Because thoughts are all around. But it's up to us, we have a choice. What are we going to ruminate on? You see, when we have an offense, something happened to us, and we go to bed, we think about it over and over and over again. I remember there was so many times that I went after work, especially 4 to 12, I would get home, I could never sleep because of some of the calls that I went to, because I kept replaying the calls over and over, thinking, maybe I should have done this, maybe I should have done that, or I'd think, oh, I was glad I did this, but I should have done that. And you replay it, and then 2 hours goes by, and I'm still awake, and I have to get up early the next morning because I want to see the kids before they went to school. So we replay, but it was my choice. Nobody forced me to think about what I just did a couple hours ago. But see, we do that. So when offenses come, we think about it, and sometimes we think about those offenses for years. Well, you don't remember when I was a kid. That's why I would never talk to my uncle, because you know what that my uncle did when I was little, and it just plays over and over and over again. But you have a choice. What are you going to let settle down in your mind? You see, because your mind is like a garden, and in a garden you could plant apple seeds, fruit trees, seeds or whatever. You could also plant poison, and the ground will start to yield the poison. Arsenic, whatever, night, I don't know, whatever the other poisons are. It'll grow. Your mind is going to grow anything you plant in it. So anything you think on is going to germinate and take root, and then eventually it'll start affecting your behavior, and you don't even know it. But this is not a series on thinking. That's another topic. Paul said this, finally. What does that mean, finally? It sums it all up. Brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, he kept writing. If anything is excellent or praiseworthy, what does he say right here? It's highlighted. Think about such things. I didn't see one thing where it said about negative, about replaying certain things and what that person did to me and what this. It doesn't say anything about that. Why does he say that? Because it's crucial to your mental health, your spiritual health, as well as your physical health. And then he goes, whatever you have learned or received or heard from me or seen in me, put it into practice. This is the key. Put it into practice. You see, when I'm teaching a message, it's not really a great message. It's only great if you become transformed by it and it changes your life and you leave this place and you apply the principles that God has for us. Then it becomes a great message. Otherwise, this is just information. But see, when we take this and we apply it, that old algebraic equation, information plus application will equal transformation. This is where you start to grow. We have to apply it. And it's hard because you have to make a choice when you're out there in the midst of confusion, in the midst of anxiety that's going all around you, and everybody is just freaking out, and you have to remain calm, and you're the light, especially if you have stuff going on. And let's say if you work in an office and things going on and gossiping and all this other stuff and jealousy exists, and you're the light shining in a dark place. You're different. You're not like them. But anyway, so what I like to call this, we need to eliminate, this is what we have to do. We have to identify and we have to eliminate the enemies of our faith. I call it the unholy trio, and it's called indecision, it's called doubt, and it's called fear. And we're going to just dissect this a little bit. You see, in your notes, indecision really is the seedling of fear. That's why I said earlier, you see, uncertainty brings anxiety. Because we don't know what to do, or we can't make a decision. And I'm not talking about going into Friendly's and choosing one out of 28 flavors. I'm not talking about those choices. I'm talking about life-changing decisions, things that's going to affect your potential, things that's going to develop your gifts and your talents so that you can do what God's called you to do. These are the life decisions that we have to make in life. And so indecision is the seedling of fear. And then indecision, what happens is, it crystallizes into doubt. Is what I was saying earlier, how doubt creeps into your life and it dulls your vision, it dulls your senses, and you lose sight of where you're supposed to be going and doing for what God called you to do. And then what happens is the two synergistically blend and becomes fear. This is what happens. We have indecision, we have doubt, and we have fear. And so you'll never act or think purposefully until you master these enemies. Because what you have to do is you have to know its name, you have to know where it lives, and you have to know what kind of habits. When I was in the police department, when we were trying to find drug dealing or human trafficking or some kind of problem that was happening in the town, we had to, first of all, we need to know who we're looking for, we need to know their habits, and we need to know where they lived. How we're going to find them. And this is what we have to do with what we think. What's residing in our subconscious? Do we have doubt? Is that a habit that I'm always doubting this, or I'm doing this, or do I have all these fears that stop me from becoming all that I could be? We have to look within. Because this is what that's why he's concerned about what goes on inside of us than what goes on around us. I think of Elisha in 1 Kings. He said, we read that Elisha asked, how long will you go limping between two different opinions? And then we fast forward to the book of James, and he said, you know what? A double-minded man is unstable in all of his ways. And he talks about when you're praying. In fact, don't even think that you can receive anything from God when you're on the fence. In fact, that was remind me of when Jesus spoke in Revelation. He said, don't sit on the fence. Either you're in the kingdom or you're not. Yeah. Don't sit on the fence and have one foot in the kingdom, one foot in the world, and just pick and choose what you like to hear. But I'm not going to do that. Because you know what Jesus said? He'll spit you out of his mouth. He doesn't want lukewarm Christians. You put your hand to the plow, don't look back. Yep. Don't be lukewarm. And that goes for pursuing what God has called you to do. The goals, the dreams, the vision that God placed in your heart. Go for it. With all your heart. You see, this blending process, when it resides in us, it's like cancer. It germinates, and you don't even know it until it's too late. It germinates without even being detected. So don't be deceived by the habits of these three enemies. We have to understand, and we have to know indecision. If you find yourself indecisive, that, well, I don't know what I should do. Should I take this job? Should I do this? Should I move here? If you can't hear the voice of God, then you got to spend time and say, I need to have some wisdom in what direction so I'm on the right path. So we have to look and see, well, what's stopping me. So, and sometimes they remain hidden in the subconscious, like I just said, where they're difficult to locate. They're even still more difficult to eliminate. Very hard. So some of the consequences of indecision, when you don't make decisions, you choose not to. What it does is lead to spiritual stagnation and a lack of progress in your life's journey. Mm-hmm. When you choose not to make a decision, see, you guys made a decision to come here tonight because you want to learn, you want to grow. because you don't want to be spiritually stagnated. But it's not just spiritual stagnation, it also, our life's journey, it affects our physical and our mental health as well. Really, our whole being. Lack of progress. Then you just begin living marking days off the calendar. So, in your notes, God said this in Isaiah, you will keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on you because he trusts in you. You see this? Perfect peace. Remember we talked about anxiety? Perfect peace. You want anxiety? Well, you want perfect peace. God had said he'll keep us in. Here's the key. What you got to do is you'll have perfect peace if your mind is focused on him. But many times our focus is on the problem. And it's like, God, woe is me. Help me, help me, help me. It's almost like, remember when Jesus said, Peter, come, when he had said, if that's you, Lord, just bid me to come. And this torrential storm, they were out in the water. I don't know how they saw it, because there was no lights out there. Maybe with the lightning lit them up and they just said, oh, it looks like a ghost. Well, no, if that's you, Lord, bid me to come. Suppose that wasn't the Lord. Suppose that was the enemy. I was thinking of that. But one thing that I like about that story, when you think about it, he said, if that's you, Lord, bid me come. So he gets out of the boat and he begins to walk on the water. Waves coming up, and see what happened is, the Bible says he lost focus for a minute or a second, I don't know how long, but the waves, he lost sight of them. And what happened? And the Bible said he was beginning to sink. Now, I'm a boater, but you don't have to be a boater to know this. That if you walked off the boat, like if I have a swim platform, but if I walked off the swim platform, I'm not going to just begin to sink. You're going to, you're just going to sink. But it's interesting that you're reading that he was beginning to sink. Well, that's weird. He was beginning to sink. He lost focus, and then finally Jesus called him and he was able to do it. So we have to, when we're in this midst of a storm, we have to be able to focus. And who do we focus on? Because if we're focusing on the solution and Jesus, well, this Isaiah 26:3, he will keep me in perfect peace because of my mind is focused on him. So what can man do to me? See, this is what we have to remember. And so indecisiveness, when we can't make a decision, really, it's linked, and you know, it's linked to instability to one's life and faith. So you have to start thinking about that, because indecision really is seen as a lack of faith because it reflects a failure to commit to God's guidance and truth. And why is it important? Because a lot of decisions that we make concerning our lives has far-reaching implications, as it says here, not just for individuals, but also for entire communities. That's why it's so important. We know Adam and Eve, they made a decision to eat the fruit. Unfortunately, it was a fatal decision, and everybody suffered after that. Right? We look at Moses, he made a choice to accept to lead his people. He said, God, don't use me. I can't speak that well. Use my brother, blah, blah, blah. He spent 40 years in the desert, and it's like, all right, I got plenty of time, but you're 80 years old. Are you going to, you finally got to talk to him through this bush. But, he made that choice. Okay, God, I'll do it. Abraham had to leave the land of Ur, but Joshua, he was when they went to the city of Jericho. Now, Joshua was a military man. He had weaponry, his army was really top notch, and he was ready to just kick butt, And then what happened, he was all set, but then he chose, because God said, listen, I want you to take the priests and take the horns, the ram's horns, and you're going to go around, and you're going to march around and blow the horns. That's not something that a military leader was going to think about. But he chose. He made the choice. I'm going to obey God, and I'm going to do this. And we know the story. After 6 days and the 7th day, he marched out, and the whole thing collapsed. Because he obeyed God. He made a choice. Okay, God, I will be. Not my will, but your will be done. So, in your notes here, doubt, feeling. It's that feeling of uncertainty. And remember, I said uncertainty certainly breeds anxiety. That's why it's important. And see, that's why Jesus said this, and I thought it was interesting, because he said in Mark 11, in your notes, it said, "For surely I say to you, whoever says to this mountain, be removed, be cast into the sea," whoever means anybody here, not just for a select few, "and does not doubt," remember we talked about doubt, "does not doubt in his heart, but believe those things which he says will come to pass." Do we really believe the things that we pray for will come to pass? We have to ask ourselves. Faith, or we give up after a while, so I guess it wasn't God's will. All right, listen to me. Coming near the end here. Doubt is not necessarily the end of real faith. In fact, it could be often the beginning of faith. Because I think of Thomas right away, because he questioned everything. And we know Thomas got a bad rap because he said, you know, everybody called him Doubting Thomas because that one time. Nobody said anything about Peter denying, you know, we can say Peter the denier, but no, Thomas is always, yes, Doubting Thomas, he's got this one thing he did. But see, one thing that Thomas did that nobody else did, he was the first one that made a public profession that he said, "My Lord and my God." In fact, if you study Thomas and you see when they were going to go to Jerusalem or Judea, Jesus was all set to go, and they said, Jesus, the disciples are trying to talk him out of it because they said, "Listen, they're going to stone you. Don't go." Maybe they're worried about themselves too. Because Jesus, don't go. You're gonna get stoned. So why don't we go somewhere else? But see, Thomas said, "Listen, you're gonna go. We might as well just die with you." Because he was the only one who said that. Well, if we're gonna go and he's gonna get stoned, well, we'll die with you. He was the only one who said that. So, okay, here we go. Never, ever, ever let the presence of a storm that you're in cause you to doubt the presence of God. Never, ever. No matter how bad it looks. Don't let fear come in and say, "Oh, God abandoned me. God left me." I think of Psalm 27, and I'll close with this here. It says, however, David wrote this psalm, and with broad, bold strokes, this king of Israel, he wrote this psalm, and it's guaranteed to infuse you with iron into your bones when you look at this. And let's read this. The Lord is my light. He wrote this. Everything's coming against him, and he said, "The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. So who am I going to be afraid of?" See, and he goes on, and he said this, "When the wicked came against me to eat up my flesh," which means they want to assassinate him, they want to kill him. He said, "My enemies and my foes, they stumbled and they fell." Isn't that good? When the enemies are trying to take you out, they're the ones who are going to fall because you're prized possessions, you're God's children. And then he goes, "Though an army may encamp against me, my heart shall not fear. And though war may rise up against me," he says, "in this I will be confident." What is he talking about? The Lord is the strength of my life. Who am I going to be afraid? Everybody's coming against me, attacking me. Why should I be afraid? In this, my heart shall be confident. This is what you have to say when you're in the storm. You know what? No matter what happens, my heart will not fear. Because fear is going to rob you of the joy, it's going to rob you of the peace, and it's going to rob you of the vision that God has for you. And so we see that David slams the door in fear's face when he declared, "Who shall I be afraid of?" We know greater is he that is in us than he that is in the world, so why should I be worried? In spite of this, I will be confident. So, this concludes this session on fear. I hope you got something out of it. We're going to just break up into small groups like we did last week. And there's a couple of questions up here. You can choose one of them that you would like. On the back of your note, there's a list of fears that I had written down. You might have some that not even on there, but decide what would be the worst that could happen to you if that fear was real. Another question, maybe, what is your biggest fear and why? Or, is there a specific place that makes you feel anxious? And of course, what do you fear most about the future, if any? All right? Take a look at those questions. Share it with the group when you think about it, something that might be ministering to you. And we'll share it with the group because we can benefit from each other by listening and what other people are feeling and how they dealt with it or what we're doing, because it's encouraging when we talk to each other. Okay? Otherwise, I'll see you next week for our final session. It'll be the X factor in this whole thing. It's going to be really good. It's going to help you become a warrior. It's going to help you overcome. So let's break up. Thank you for tonight. And,